Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster with your hosts, Gaius and Jackson. I'm delighted to jump into a little gem of a movie from February 19th, 1999 today. We're talking about October Sky, a little movie that debuted, like I said, back in February 25 years ago this year, directed by Joe Johnston, and a movie that I think Gaius and I both had put a lot of years in between seeing it last, but I got a lot of nostalgia attached to this movie. So really excited to jump in. And I don't think either of us have talked to each other about this movie before. We were just saying offline how it sort of kind of falls in by the wayside, thinking about a lot of other movies from the 1999 club. But by no means should you think about skipping it if you ever come across it. But yeah, without further ado, Gaius, what did you think? You got the watch in today, just like I did on the anniversary itself, right?
Yeah, as of recording, because we're recording on February 19th. And like you said, I hadn't really thought about October Sky in a really, really long time. There have been years since I watched it last.
Yep.
I do remember the first time I saw it, and it was like you said offline. It was actually in a class, and for myself, it was in high school.
Okay,
That was
nice.
the first. And the unfortunate thing about that first time watch is, of course, like the movie is longer than a typical class period would be, so that watch
Right.
was split up into 2 days for that particular class.
I think mine must have been two, probably.
So that wasn't the best way to watch it, but still an interesting first time watching school. And then God, it would have to be 10 plus years since I've seen this last, and not even like popping it in to like be like, oh, I want to watch it. I think it might have been like on TV, and it might have been just background noise when I was doing something else.
Right.
That's like the last time I can remember watching it. But the cool thing was when this was on our list of potential anniversary episodes, you picked it as one that you really wanted to do.
That's right.
And it was interesting. I wouldn't have thought to have been like, oh, I want to do that one.
Just have it as an option. Yeah.
Yeah, I included it on the list because it was I saw it and I was like, oh, it'll be 25. So like it's there if anyone's inclined to do it. And definitely not one I would have been like, oh, let's jump in and get this one in. But I was happy that you picked it because one, it's another example of how different some of the anniversary episodes are. Like we just did one for Friday the 13th, which is a completely different piece than this.
As different as it could be.
And it just gave myself and yourself an opportunity to watch something that we hadn't watched in a really long time. Probably haven't even thought about it in a really long time.
That's
and
right.
I think for me, it kind of brought back that feeling of like, it's so, I'm trying to find the best way to put it. It's just so wholesome and nice.
Yeah. Wholesome is a good way to describe it. Absolutely. It's very
like,
all-American, just nice, heartwarming, good, feel-good story.
Yeah, this movie does not have a chip on its shoulder. It's very inspirational. You can't help but feel a little inspired yourself while you're watching it.
Yep.
Even if you have like no interest in rocketry or anything like that, you're like, well, maybe I could one day after you're watching it. And that was the feeling I got watching it this morning. I felt like happy when it was over. Like it was like a genuine, like I felt happy for everyone involved. Like every character in that movie. Like,
yep.
Just watching like movies like this are interesting because they could easily be like so cheesy that it's like that was like really like on the nose and like you almost want to roll your eyes because it seems very like too good to be true. But since this is based on a true story, you're like, all right. Well, you can't really look at it that way when you're watching it this way.
I mean, I agree. Like, I'm sure maybe some moments are embellished a little bit, for the sake of it being a movie, but for the most part, yeah, absolutely. I feel like it has those sentimentalities of like the typical 90s movie, like some scenes that I'm sure we'll get into, but for me, it never quite bordered on actual cheese. Like I never rolled my eyes at any parts, even though there is lots about this movie that formulaic of other movies like from the time period for sure, but no, it never gave me cause to like roll my eyes or groan at a cheesiness, which was nice. But it got close a couple times, but all in all, it was an absolute blast to get back to this one. You said it had been like a decade plus for you. I remember, unless I don't think I ever saw this in between, but the last time I remember and the only time I remember watching this movie was in my I guess it was more like these days we'd call it like an IT class, but it was actually taught by a friend of mine's father who was also named Jackson. And there was part of this curriculum. I was in what you guys call junior high. We call middle school over here. So I was in 8th grade. So this would have been second semester. So it was 2012. I can at least, that's the closest I could pinpoint it. And there was actually a rocket part of the curriculum for this class where we actually built our own makeshift rockets and got to launch them out on the school property. And so we watched October Sky in anticipation of that part of the curriculum. And at that point, I was already blossoming as like a movie lover, not nearly to the regard that I am these days, but where there was lots of people like not paying attention or chatting or on their phones in class. Like I remember being hooked, like loved this movie when I saw it. Exactly. And like come to see, like seeing it again today, like I didn't remember, I would not have known who Laura Dern was at that time, even though I would have seen Jurassic Park by 8th grade. Jake Gyllenhaal, obviously I would have known when I was like 13 or 14 in grade 8. But it was really cool, I guess, to see some faces that I would not have known at the time I saw it the first time. I knew Chris Cooper, of course, as well, who plays Jake Gyllenhaal's father. But it was great now putting over a decade of movie watching in between this last watch. I love doing that, like when a movie brings you back and seeing faces that you didn't realize were in this movie at the time. So it was honestly that was half the fun I had with this watch, is being like, oh, that's Jesse from Fast and Furious is in this movie. I haven't seen him.
Yeah, that was another one. I was like, my brain to like, what? I was like, because I was like, every time I think about like Jesse from the Fast and Furious, like, what else has that guy been in? And then I was like watching it this morning, and I was like, oh, he is in this. That's crazy.
Yeah. Another fun part is seeing what scenes I remembered, which ones came back to me, and there was fewer than I would have remembered, actually, that I would have thought. Because I remember the general premise of the movie, like no problem. But like as far as individual scenes, only a few really stood out to me that like, oh, I remember this happening. I already know where this is going, which is also kind of fun to test the memory. But yeah, long story short, it's been a long time for me since I've seen it too. And I'd say like I can appreciate it much more now these days than I even could have back when I was a teenager. And I liked it when I saw it.
Yeah. For all the kids at home, just in case they don't know what October Sky is about, like he said, it's directed by Joe Johnston, and it stars Jake Gyllenhaal, Chris Cooper, Chris Owen, Laura Dern, Chad Lindberg, who is Jesse from the Fast and Furious, for those keeping score. The screenplay is by Lewis Collick, based on a memoir of the same name. Tells a true story of Homer H. Hickam Jr., a coal miner's son who was inspired by the launch of Sputnik 1 in 1957 to take up rocketry against his father's wishes, and eventually became a NASA engineer. October Sky is actually an anagram of Rocket Boys, the title of the 1998 memoir upon which the film is based. It is also used in a period radio broadcast describing Sputnik 1 as it crossed the October Sky. Homer Hickam said that Universal Studios marketing people got involved, and they just had to change the title because, according to their research, women over 30 would never see a movie titled Rocket Boys.
Okay.
The book was later re-released with the name in order to capitalize on interest in the film. I think that's the movie made $34.7 million on a $25 million budget. But what's impressive, even though that's not like a huge amount, it had a $5.9 million opening weekend, so it had like a little bit of word of mouth and then die quick, considering how low it premiered at. And they said in the years since its release that it really has, particularly in the area in which it takes place, the cultural impact of the movie still resonates today, I guess. They have there's 2 annual festivals in honor of the Rocket Boys and the film. One is held in West Virginia, where the real life events depicted in the book and film took place, and the other is in Tennessee, where the movie was actually shot. So it still has its own little, I don't know if you call it cult following, but it has it's respected even now, 25 years later. But even though that's the case, like it could be for a lot of people like it was with us, you kind of forget about it, even though it's a pretty solid movie.
Very solid, and definitely. I don't know, but looking at Joe Johnston's filmography right here for those that might recognize the name, but can't think. I think people may have seen more movies by him than they realized. He'd done Rocket Boys it was the first movie he followed up Jumanji with, which I didn't realize until looking at it right now that he was the Jumanji director, which is pretty cool. I knew him from the first Captain America movie from 2011, which he directed, and Jurassic Park 3, which I know is not the best. I have this kind of a soft spot for all the Jurassic Parks, at least the first 3. Didn't know he did that either. But probably the other work in his filmography that really surprised me, a movie that I would love to cover, I'm just seeing right now, it turns 20 this year, Hidalgo with Viggo Mortensen is a great little flick that I think would be great to. Yeah, I did not know he directed that. So this guy's got a pretty sweet, and that's not even all the notable works he's done, but he's got a great little directing filmography, and I'd say this is definitely, of the ones that I've seen, they've all been pretty much of the same caliber. Like, he's brought a lot. He did visual effects on Raiders of the Lost Ark too, so really talented director here. And I think it's weird that this movie sort of overlooked, considering how good it really is and how well it's sort of what's the word I'm looking for here? It kept up over 25 years, but. Yeah, Jumanji though, that threw me for a loop. I did not know that he directed that. I used to
love that movie. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I used to love it when I was younger.
Next year will be 30.
Yeah. So it's interesting too. You said Hidalgo that turns 20 this year.
Right.
We could possibly be covering 3 Joe Johnston movies. So he also directed, which I didn't even realize, he directed Honey, I Shrunk the Kids that came out in '89. That'll be 35.
Okay, wow. That would be pretty crazy.
That's interesting. And he also, and I don't know if you've seen it, but I feel like you will like it if you haven't seen it. He did The Rocketeer, which is like that movie did not make a ton of money when it came out, but it is a cult classic now, and it's really, really good movie. It was supposed to like kind of launch like a big franchise for Disney, and it just didn't happen because it just didn't make a lot of money. But it's a movie that years later people have like reevaluated and have been like very curious as to why that movie didn't hit the way it should have in 1991. But it's considered a classic now, which is kind of interesting. But it's a really really good movie. I think you might like it if you haven't seen it. But yeah,
I've seen it in his filmography, and I definitely recognize like the cover art of The Rocketeer, but really don't know anything about it. Would be super down. But I would love to cover 3 Joe Johnston movies this year. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, I only would have seen a little bit on TV when I was really, really young. So it would more or less be a first time watch. But Hidalgo, I want to book that in right now. That'd be great to cover. But back to October Sky, I love to like that. I remember just one of those little slick details that I always appreciated about this movie is I remember Mr. Pomeroy telling us that about the anagram, October Sky and Rocket Boys. I thought that was just so slick. So I was eager. I watched this with my girlfriend today. Actually, she joined. So if she's watching, she'll know too that I was eager in telling her about that anagram rather. Yeah.
And I didn't even know that. So I didn't know that.
It's pretty cool detail for sure.
Yeah. Until I like had to like look up stuff today, and I was like, and it's one of those things that seems so obvious, but when I was reading it, I was like, that makes sense. This was also Jake Gyllenhaal had already been acting as a child actor for a little bit, but this is considered his kind of breakthrough movie.
Okay.
In a lot of ways, he was 17 when he filmed it. They actually said that he actually had a tutor and stuff on set because he was taking like accelerated like classes while he was still in school while making this movie. So like it's hard. It's crazy because he does. I mean, Jake Gyllenhaal has aged pretty well, but it is interesting looking at this because he looks so young. Like it's just like I haven't watched a movie of his where he around this time with him in it in a really long time. So I was like, oh yeah, kind of. But to go along with that kind of youthful exuberance, it kind of goes in his performance as well. Like he is very likable. In this
absolutely movie. Yep.
And honestly all the Rocket Boys are likable in it, but like you have to want to root for him and make believe that he can succeed. And Jake Gyllenhaal definitely has that shucks personality in this movie where you're like, how can you not like him?
Right. So absolutely.
So go along with it being like a really good performance is just his natural like personality. I think also makes him really good for that role, and really selling it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I guess I compare this to him. He done Donnie Darko, which is a favorite of mine. Only a couple years.
Yeah, I love that
later.
movie too.
and in that 2 years, I guess he doesn't age too much, but this you can absolutely tell he's very youthful in this. But I agree, there's something about his portrayal in this movie that makes you just innately want him to succeed. I think it's from the moment when the town is kind of like looking up at Sputnik passing by, and the whole crowd is like dissipating after it sort of passes their line of sight, and he's still standing like slack-jawed with his like face to the stars, and you can tell in that moment that it's ignited this passion for discovery and for, I guess, more like exploring space in general. And from then on, he is just absolutely steadfast in building rockets. And by the movie's conclusion, we see really what that leads to him for him as a career in this field, which is just the ultimate cherry on top for this success story.
Yeah, it's one of those things too. Like when you're reading like the plot, like even just me reading it and then realizing what he goes on to do as adult, it sounds like something that's too good to be true. Like that has to be made up for a movie. But then you're just like, no, like it's so crazy that is, and rightfully so. I mean, when you are that passionate about something and you really believe that you can do it, I mean, those kind of things can happen for people who are really, I especially like hearing it when they're so invested in doing something like this, even though so many people are telling him they shouldn't, or being like, oh, you should do this because you're expected to do this, as he kind of is in the film. Chris Cooper plays his dad, kind of like, you're going to work in the mines and that's about it. And then like sports, that's all the things that, like, especially during that time, that you were probably pushed to do. And that could have been another aspect of the movie that felt like really familiar. It would have been like kind of, oh, I've seen this before, and like I know how this plays out. But the way that there's like little things in their performances together, where it doesn't just come off as like an angry dad being upset that his son wants to do something completely different with his life. You can tell there's like there's a hint of he's almost proud of him in certain ways, doesn't want to express it because he's seeing that he's doing his own thing, but he wishes that he would apply that to what he's doing. And even in those conflicts that they have with each other, I mean, I love that moment towards the end of the movie where he invites his dad to go watch the launch, and it's kind of contentious at first, but then he basically, by the end of it, he insinuates like, Ron wasn't his hero. Like, you're my hero. And then like basically, and then I swear after that was over, I got like a little like in my throat. I was like, oh,
I was trying. There was a couple moments in the last 5 minutes. Not that anything like too objectively sad in the movie happens, but the stuff that like makes you just kind of well up and like gets that lump in your throat. I was like trying not to like let a tear slide down my cheek.
You're at the point, with your girlfriend.
Exactly. And I was like pressing my tongue to the roof of my mouth, like, "Okay, do not cry right now." But like that moment is so heartwarming when he tells his dad, like you can tell his dad's like, disappointed that he won't be following in his footsteps. And he thinks that his son admires these, big scientists more than he does his own father. And when he kind of corrects him and lets him know, like, no, that this guy isn't my hero. He doesn't even have to say like, you are. That would have maybe bordered on cheese, but because he leaves that out and it's just like the implication. Oh man, it just reminded me like that could be anyone and their dad sort of thing. It made it like universal. But it was very touching. And there's a few moments when his dad does show up to the final rocket launch and they let him like kind of press the button to launch it. Another just amazing.
And again, a moment that could easily be cheesy, but it still works. Like when he's like basically, thanking everyone that like got them there and like who inspired them. And he gets to the point where he's about to like, thank his dad. And then there's like that pause, and then kind of the music kicking in, and then he shows up and he says dad like quietly at the end because he like is surprised to see him. And it could have been really cheesy, but it works. I don't know. I felt every ounce of emotion while by the end of that movie, be like, yep. I'm glad we ended up here. And like the movie makes you like earn that journey too. Like that's what I liked about it as well. Like you and like, and even if you like didn't read like the plot outline or anything like that, like that is what your hope is when you're watching something like this. Like, all right, I hope we get to a point where he proves everyone wrong and that he was really meant to do something like this. That is what you want from a film like this. So I was, you're just happy that like succeed.
Oh, and does it ever deliver on that? Because like I'm sure there's been there's true stories where maybe the odds are stacked a little bit more against the protagonist, but for all accounts, Jake Gyllenhaal's character Homer Hickam doesn't necessarily have much on his side at the time he decides he wants to start developing rockets. He's got the dad that initially is not supportive at all, that keeps writing off his passion as nonsense, and he's got the older brother who kind of has his dad's affections because he's the star football player. There's just not, he's stuck in this dead end town where the only hopes of getting out are through a football scholarship, and we see very early on that is not where his aptitudes lie. There's a funny sequence where he's keeps repeatedly getting knocked down in football.
Knocked out,
I appreciated like how brief that scene was, because it was as brief as it was. It's a little sequence of him getting tackled several times, but the whole it doesn't need to linger. It tells us in that 30-second clip or a minute long clip, this is not what he's destined to do. Let's just get that out of the way now. And I thought it was pretty effective for how short it really was. But yeah, and if not for football, then really everyone stuck in that town is destined for a really crude, harsh career working a coal mine in a dead end town. And at that point, very early on, it's kind of established that this is a survival story for Homer Hickam. He's not going to make it out on a football scholarship, and he desperately doesn't want to go work in the mine where everyone ends up either dying from some sort of mine accident or developing like the black lung or something, as we see several times throughout the movie. So it's sort of a do or die. Like he needs to make this work and get to the science fair and hopefully win for any sort of chance to break it out into the bigger world. So it's very much feels like a survival story from Homer's perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And I also, he is very much aware that like there's aspects of that town that are dying. And like, you can't, there was no like sustainable life that he could have working in the coal mines. And he like knows that too. So how he's like hyper aware of, what he needs to do to get out. Otherwise he'll just be kind of stuck, and he doesn't want to be stuck. And I do like that even though he feels that way, there is still like this sense of respect that he has for his father, even though he doesn't want to do what he does. He still respects him as a man who has provided for their family, and but just wants to do he wants to do that, but in his own way and on his own terms, basically. So I love that there isn't so like, I don't want to be stuck here like you, almost like it's like an insult, because that's not really how it comes off. It comes off more like, I just need to do my own path as I see what's happening here, and I also see what my options are, and like I want a better one. So like there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm glad that it's presented that way and not more like a disrespectful, like, you've been stuck here doing this and I want to be like you. It doesn't come off that way, at least.
No, and it really didn't. And just to add to that too, I think there's a couple moments where Chris Cooper's character, like the dad, it's kind of displayed that he actually is just passionate about, as weird as it sounds, he loves doing what he does. He says he at a time, like, he's like, he was born to do this, to work in the coal mine, and he understands it like the back of his hand. And so I feel like he wants his son to share that passion, because obviously it's clear his older son is going to go down the route of football scholarships and kind of get out that way. So Homer's really his last chance at kind of having the son follow in his footsteps. That's something that he's crafted this great career from. Great, I use loosely, but something that he's risen to the top in this industry and wants his son to inherit that position from him. And it can't be the older son who's just destined for greater things, like football wise. So I think he kind of does. He just kind of wishes Homer had that shared passion, and is sort of throughout the movie conflicted that his son has a different one in rockets, I suppose, and why he passes it off as nonsense for so much of the movie. But it makes sense why they butt heads, and I thought that was portrayed really well. And Chris Cooper does a great job. I feel like he's born to play that resistant dad type. Like, he's so good in that role.
Well, he has very good resistant dad face. Like, he looks like one of those guys that would like be like that. They have oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to mention, I think, is it American Beauty came out the same year? He's like the same role in American Beauty. Which is kind of funny.
Same here.
Yeah. Anyway, I sort of cut you off.
No, it's all right. They have that really good scene where they are in that kind of full-fledged like argument with each other, and And like it's such a powerful and well done scene. I like by the time Jake Gyllenhaal basically says like he's gonna leave and like he's like, and I'll never come back, he'll never look back.
Right.
You can only, and you can tell like even if it's in the acting mostly, but you can just tell these are things being said out of anger and he doesn't really mean it.
Right.
But it's like, but this is a point where he's like, I need to like, you fully need to understand what I'm doing with my life, and you're not gonna stop me from doing it. And then it just getting the pushback from his dad because he's just, like you said, he has his reasons for him wanting to do what he wants him to do.
Right.
It's just a really well written and well acted scene in general. Because when it was over, I was like thinking in my head, I was like, no, you guys don't really hate each other. Come on, this is. You like took a moment to talk for like a second. You would realize you're on the same page, but like in different ways.
Exactly. I'm glad you say comment on how well written it is, because I didn't know this until I had the IMDb page open in front of me. But of the two writing credits, Homer Hickam Jr., who I can only assume is like Jake Gyllenhaal's character's eventual son, shares a writing credit on this movie with Lewis Colick. I'm guessing that's from like the memoir.
The memoir, yeah.
I'm curious if you had any input on the script.
The script's really good. And like I said, movies like this can come off sometimes as really saccharine and cheesy, and but I think the script does a good job of, well, one, establishing all the characters, and in the case of Jake Gyllenhaal's character, making it clear what he's passionate about and what he wants to do. I think in a lesser movie, the realizing that he wants to do this thing and then making the steps to do it could have been like something that could be rushed in a lesser movie where you're like, okay, I don't buy that this is happening in this amount of time.
Right.
But I think the script does a good job of like selling it as something, oh yeah, I believe that this is happening the way it should, rather than them rushing through like each moment of like how he started and where he ends up. And I think the screenplay does a good job of establishing that, and like all the characters are also really well rounded. Like of course they're based on real people, but I think I've told you before where I love watching a movie where you kind of forget that you're watching actors and you just are watching characters at that point. And I think the combination of their performances and how it's written is how these people feel completely authentic and real, and not just like actors playing roles.
Right. And no one does that better, I think, than Jake Gyllenhaal. I mean, obviously you can tell it's him at the beginning of a blossoming career, but he very much embodies Homer Hickam, I think. And I love that this story is just even told, and Jake Gyllenhaal is attached to play somebody like Homer Hickam, because it's a great story. And I'm surprised that there's not like more adaptations or anything else. I think this is such an interesting dream to follow, and makes for a fantastic film.
Yep. And considering when this came out, like I feel like 1999 was, people were very much more accepting and wanting movies like this. I think it was more of a really good time for it to come out, where people were more, I imagine maybe if it opened like today, like with the current generation of moviegoers, that they'd be like, oh, they probably think it was boring or cheesy, or like wouldn't want to watch it. But like back then, I think a lot of people wanted that kind of like it almost feels like Disney could have made it for,
absolutely.
It could have come from that same cloth, like
exactly. It would fit in their filmography quite nicely. But I feel like if it was, kind of held from a studio like that, we would definitely be saying it was a little bit more cheesier. But that being said, like it's got a 14A rating, which is like kind of appropriate. I don't really know what it did to earn that. I feel like it could be a PG-13, no problem. But
yeah. And I also would like to actually shout out Laura Dern as well, because I think
she's fantastic.
And a lot of us in our own lives have probably had at least one teacher that like inspired us, and like
definitely.
And I think she portrays that very well. Totally forgot when I was watching today that she, what ends up happening her, she gets sick and then she gets like Hodgkin's lymphoma. I totally forgot that. So like, so when he went to go visit her in the hospital, like another lump in my throat, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot this happened. And the real lady was like 31 when she died.
I know, which is like right around the age that Laura Dern was when she was filming this too, actually. So
yeah,
which is
crazy.
Really, I kind of remember her being in the hospital, but didn't remember why, and definitely didn't realize that she died so young. Do you know anything about Hodgkin's lymphoma? Would it have been from like the effects of coal mining. Like I know she wasn't a coal miner, but maybe just like the dust or the atmosphere in the town. Like I'm just curious.
Yeah, I was
Seems
wondering that too.
related.
It seemed like it could be related.
Or is it a type of cancer?
Yeah, oh yeah, it is. Okay, yeah, it's a type of which cancer originates from a specific type of white blood cell, uh,
Uh,
and it's present in the patient's lymph nodes. And yeah, so yeah,
okay.
yeah, really young to
Yeah.
pass away. Like yeah, but I also like what Laura Dern does with that part because it's not like a huge role. Like it's not she doesn't dominate the movie or anything, but like in a
Right.
few she has like enough moments that she sells that character really well, and also another likable person because you want someone like that. Because you know I think everyone that wants to do certain things that they believe that they can do needs if your parents aren't going to cheerlead for you, you need at least someone to, and
Right.
she represents that cheerleader role really well, and
Yes.
seeing like believing in what they can accomplish. So yeah, I thought she was quite good, and it's interesting. Laura Dern as an actress, she's one actress I didn't pay a lot of attention to until way later in
Right.
life. Like, of course, everyone knew her from Jurassic Park, so I knew that. But like, it's a
Yes.
lot of her, the stuff that she's done as she's matured as an actress, whether it be Big Little Lies or Marriage Story or anything like that. I'm like, oh, she's
She's great in
always
Marriage Story.
pretty solid. And I kind of
Yeah.
was like, why didn't I pay more attention to her earlier? Yeah, she's always been pretty reliable and pretty never bad in anything that I can think of. Like, she's always pretty solid.
I always love her work with David Lynch too. I recently watched Blue Velvet, and she's great in
Yeah,
that too. Really young role for her. That was 12 years before October Sky, and she was young then in the 90s. But even
yeah.
move my computer there. Yeah, she's great in all of her collaborations with David Lynch too. She's great, and you're right. I kind of didn't. I would have seen many Laura Dern performances like before like the late 2010s, and that's kind of when I started taking note too of her stock as an actress. She's fantastic. She's in a lot of great stuff that kind of goes underlooked sometimes, but she's kind of having somewhat of like a, I don't know if I want to say like a renaissance, because I don't think her career was ever dead by any means, but like I think she's getting a lot more like mainstream clout these days, which I'm happy for because she's fantastic. But Marriage Story, I think, is definitely one of those roles that kind of catapulted her back into the mainstream again, because
Yeah.
she's great in that.
She definitely I think had, I mean, like you said, I don't know if we would call it a full like career renaissance because I don't think she ever went away.
No,
But it was, I mean, I think the combination of like Big Little Lies, Marriage Story, all that kind of happening pretty much around the same time, and then she was getting accolades from both on the
right. Big
TV
Little
side and
Lies,
the
I
movie
never
side.
saw. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now there are some people that think her performance in Marriage Story is too similar to her role in Big Little Lies, so they're like, no, that's not really a stretch. But like, I think she's great in both, and those are just the type of characters that they happen to be.
Mhm.
But yeah, it is interesting that she definitely hadn't gone anywhere, but she definitely had like a run where she was like back to back, like
Yeah.
kind of being noticed in a big way.
On the note of her actual character, just one thing I wanted to throw in about what I loved is I love how she kind of like ties what inspires her to kind of edge these guys on and like root for them and support them in any way she can, is because she ties their inevitable success in like the science fair and with the rocket development like to
Yeah,
her success as a teacher, and she is like sort of wants that to be her legacy for these boys to kind of get out of the town and make something of themselves in
yeah,
whatever fields they decide to. But I thought that was a really important motivator for her to continue to support them when they really had no one else in their corner, it seemed. And I think that just makes her character resonate so much with all the great teachers that people would have had, I'm sure, throughout their school
yeah,
years. But she's a universal figure to a lot of people, myself included. She reminds me of a couple teachers that I went to school with that just were so pivotal in people's, lives, and in such a pivotal time for young people's lives as a teacher. It's such an influential person, and she embodies that in this role like better than many roles I've seen.
yeah. I think I've had a couple. I definitely had my drama teacher was one in high school. I can remember
Definitely.
that. And then also I was on our school newspaper, so that was
Cool. We
a
didn't have a
big
school
reason that
newspaper.
a big kind of supporter of uh just writing in general, but then also believing that I could like do more, like push myself to do more. So yeah, I definitely saw a lot of that in her. which is made. That's why I like the
Yeah.
character so much, and I'm glad that she, unfortunately for her character passes away, that she got to see that success, that she was able to see that they accomplished this, and
Yes.
then that she was right to support him. I got a little choked up again. Like, she's in the hospital and she's basically telling him that she can't wait to tell, like, other people, future students, that they can, see what they can do, basically. And then you're like, oh, that in your mind, you're like, oh, that's not gonna happen. But
yeah, definitely a gut punch for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, it is nice that she gets to see that accomplishment though before.
Yes, and that they dedicate their last rocket. They name it Miss Riley, which is awesome.
Named after her,
yeah. Just in the IMDb trivia here, and I thought it'd be worth mentioning since we're recording on February the 19th, the 25th anniversary. The time this movie released on February 19th, 99, it was the real life Homer Hickam Jr.'s 56th birthday, which would make today his 81st. I'm not sure if he's still alive, but pretty interesting fact.
I believe he is. I think I looked it up
earlier,
and I believe he is. Yes, he is. He is still alive.
Oh, okay, great. Well, happy birthday, Homer Hickam Jr. That's I wonder. I'm guessing that might be why they released it on when they did. It was for his birthday.
Yeah, probably to coincide with it. Yeah, he is still alive, and he has accomplished a lot. He is an American author, Vietnam War veteran, and a former NASA engineer who trained the first Japanese astronauts. And then, of course, his 1998 memoir, Rocket Boys, also published as October Child, was a New York Times bestseller and was the basis for the 1998 film that we're talking about today. And it says Hickam's body of written work also includes several additional best-selling memoirs and novels. And then, his books have also been translated into many different languages. So he's done a lot.
I didn't know he was a Vietnam War vet. That's pretty crazy. What a life he led.
A lot with his life. So if you're wondering why, there was a movie made about him, well, there you go. He's accomplished a great deal.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's interesting too. I was like looking up as well, because I was wondering why they did not film in West Virginia. And they said, although the film takes place in West Virginia, Tennessee was the location of choice for filming, in part because of the weather and area terrain. They said film crews reconstructed the sites to look like the 1957 mining town setting the movie demanded. They said the weather of East Tennessee gave the filmmakers trouble and delayed production of the film. Cast and crew recalled the major weather shifts and tornadoes in the area during the filming months. But Joe Johnston claimed ultimately the movie looks great because of it. It gave the film a much more interesting and varied look. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because come to think of it, I don't think there was an outdoor scene in this movie that maybe the railroad sequence when they're taking the tracks off, which is my favorite moment in the movie, which I'm actually just reading right now, is actually embellished for the movie. I guess in real life they didn't actually steal the railroad, at least according to IMDb. But other than that, I'm pretty sure every other scene outdoors, it's like gloomy, raining, dark, which is like so picturesque of like the town and the futures that they're facing if they don't leave that town, because probably so gloomy because of coal smoke blocking out the sun. But it's funny to see that the weather gave them the production trouble, seeing as they wanted to shoot there for the weather. Yeah. That's funny.
That's funny. Also, more than 2,000 extras were used in the film. A small switching yard allowed the filmmakers and actors to film the scenes with the boys on the railroad and gave them freedom to do as they please, including the tearing apart of tracks. And the locomotive used in the scene was Southern Railway 4501, relettered as Norfolk, and Western number 4501. And then filming concluded on April 30th, 1998, and it started on February 23rd, 1998. So they started shooting the movie pretty much a year before it was released.
Okay. And did you say that the memoir came out in 1998?
Let me see.
I think you said it when you were speaking, but I couldn't catch it.
Originally published in 1998 as Rocket Boys.
Oh wow, well, they adapted that quick, didn't they?
Pretty quick, yeah. You know what? Some memoirs and books kind of get like a quick turnaround. Like sometimes they will see what someone is writing or hear about it, and they will option it right away. Sometimes not even knowing how good the book will be.
Interesting,
especially if it's like an established author too. They'll
that makes more sense. Yeah, like Stephen King, for instance. But I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, yeah. So, that is a pretty quick turnaround. That's crazy. Huh. But and I was trying to see what else. And like I said, it had a $5.9 million opening weekend, which I know it seems very low, but given what it ended up grossing, $34.6 million, it had legs of some sort.
Yeah,
Like
clearly.
a $5.9 million opening usually meant like a quick death in the box office, but this one kind of stuck around a bit. And it was also a very competitive time.
Yeah.
In 1990, like just in general, around that point. So I mean, the fact that it did as well as it did, even though it started so low, I think is impressive.
I'm guessing The Matrix came around the corner and sort of killed it, if I were to guess, because I know it came out earlier March.
So yeah, that's all March. There's as we know, we have like an anniversary list for March. There's a ton from 1999 in March.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a bunch of different movies were coming out. Dramas, teen films. There was a lot of different things for people to like
Right.
sink their teeth into in 1999. Like all types of genres were taking off in a pretty significant
Definitely.
way.
This is a pretty safe one, like very timeless sort of story and feel to it that like it feels like
Yeah.
it could belong in any decade.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. I mean, I guess it's not like an Oscar baity kind of movie, but I'm kind of surprised that it wasn't positioned later in the year to maybe be one for Universal. But maybe they thought it really wasn't one. But when I was watching it, I was like, I could see this like snatching up some awards if they campaigned for it. But I don't know.
Yeah,
that was interesting that they didn't really
and that
push
thought
it as
never
one.
crossed my mind watching it. It definitely doesn't feel like it's well, maybe in terms of the story and like the where it's kind of gripping at your heart a little bit, but like it didn't seem to me like it was really advocating for Oscars. But you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe that had something to do with how early in the year it was released. I wonder if Universal had any other contenders in the Best Picture category that year. Maybe they just had stock in a different movie. But
that's very possible. Yeah, but yeah,
yeah,
the performances are strong enough to have gotten some of that attention. But yeah, man, you're right. You might be right. It might be that they either had something else that they wanted to push more, or maybe it never really felt like that kind of movie when they were developing it. So,
and funny, Chris Cooper is actually in the Best Picture winner from that year too, still with American Beauty, which is funny.
Beauty.
And he literally plays such a similar character; it's too good.
Yeah, he had a 1999 was a really good year for him.
I guess what else did he do? Anything else?
Well, yeah. So let's see. So American Beauty came out in 99. This came out in 99. I'm trying to see what else I can pull up from him. I mean, those two alone are just pretty good to have done.
Oh, absolutely.
It is funny that they are very similar. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, of course, he has range and he can play different roles. But
Right.
you're right. He does have that kind of look and demeanor. Like when you think of a dad like that, who's like, "No, you're not doing this. You're gonna play football. You're gonna work in the mines." Like that
I
looks
guess
like he looks like someone like that.
More broadly, I'd say just a natural born like authoritative figure because he plays that in a lot of, even if he's not like a hard nosed dad, he's very much like has a very commanding presence. I know he's like he plays a lot of military roles, like authority roles, so he's just bred for that. Yeah.
To kind of the weekend that this movie opened, I'm guessing like there was no real big new wide release. It opened in fourth place, $5.9 million opening weekend. The number one movie in America, what for the third week in a row, was a movie called Payback with Mel Gibson. It had a $10.2 million weekend that weekend. And then in second place was something called Message in the Bottle. I've never seen it. It's and then in third place, my favorite Martian. I've never seen that either.
Okay.
And fifth place was a movie called Blast from the Past with Brendan Fraser and Alicia Silverstone. So
That
it was
I've heard of.
Pretty slow weekend that it came out.
I guess so. I mean, not much has changed in 25 years, considering the box office position that we're in right now. February and January, for the most part. I mean, there's been exceptions over the last few years, but very much a slow time of year for productions, and definitely seems like it was the case back in 1999 as well.
Yeah, and then it definitely had legs. It only dropped 18.6% in its second weekend, even though it fell out of the top five. It was still making decent small amounts of money from week to week until it exited theaters.
Huh.
Yeah, I was like, what would yeah, so yeah, it had a, and what it's actually too, because the weekends, like I'm looking up the weekends, like that weekend, and then the second weekend and third weekend, there weren't like huge movies that were opening, but I mean, but still, like somebody would remember. Like Analyze This came out and was the #1 movie in America during October Sky's third weekend. Cruel Intentions was in second that
Oh,
weekend as
okay.
well. But yeah, and Shakespeare in Love was out as well, still making
Okay.
money 13 weeks after it was released.
Okay. Yeah, it was. Yeah, still holding strong after its late
Yeah,
1998 release.
it's crazy. So yeah, definitely a slower time when it came out, which probably helped it kind of stick around a little bit because it was
Probably.
there
Yeah.
weren't like a ton of options, but they're
Yeah.
and I'm sure it's like one of those movies that maybe like trailer wise you wouldn't be like, oh, I need to see that, but once a few people saw it, they're probably like, yeah, you should probably check it out because it
Yeah.
will definitely inspire you. Like I said, I feel like I was inspired after it was
I feel that way
over.
too. Honestly, 100%. It definitely has that feel to it. It is very. It's like a coming of age and inspirational sort of story, which go hand in hand. Those, I think, genres really mix well together.
Yeah, and and Jake Gyllenhaal too. I mean, probably one of the more consistent actors working today, I think, and he had that skill pretty young.
Oh yeah, exactly. This is his
and,
first leading role. Yeah.
oh yeah, and that's only developed since, and yeah, you can just tell. I mean, I guess he runs in the family too because Maggie, his sister, is also a fine
His sister's
actress as well.
fantastic. Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting to kind of see like when these kind of humble beginnings almost, but he had so much like talent and range already that it doesn't even seem like like a start really. It's like this guy's already like hit the ground running pretty much, and it's also interesting too. You talked about Donnie Darko, like that you said that came out 2 years after this.
Yeah.
Again, another example of a completely different role that he plays like very, very well.
Right.
a different type of high school student.
Yes, very disturbed one. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm just impressed with how good he was in this, and because thinking about like when it came out and like what a time like that was for him in his career, like just starting out, like he holds his own in scenes with much more veteran actors,
Yeah,
with scenes with Chris
absolutely.
Cooper and Laura Dern. So I thought he was solid. And I actually thought the other kids who played the Rocket Boys were also good. I bought their like camaraderie as a group of people that were building this thing together and as
Yes, me
friends,
too.
and like almost kind of like this kind of like ragtag group of kids doing this against all odds, and like you believe it and you buy it. So like I thought, even though Jake Gyllenhaal would get most of the attention, I thought that together they were all really good too.
I completely agree. And like I'd say like the group is only as good as its weakest link, and there really is no weak link, and all the Rocket Boys are fantastically portrayed. They have enough like individualism to kind of set them all apart from one another, but I do feel like they don't fit into the typical tropes of like the 4-man team sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like obviously Quentin, he's like the stereotypical like nerdy one, but like, and other than that, and Homer sort of being like the unofficial leader of them in terms of like who's recognized the most. I don't feel like they easily could have, but I don't feel like they really go down that road of like the typical sort of trope. So I feel like they're all very much on equal footing with each other in it. And I really like that it felt that way while throughout watching it. Obviously there's a few instances where that's not the case, like Quentin sort of being the outcast in the beginning for how nerdy he is. But I also really, I think it's wholesome how quickly they adopt him into their group and are willing to like take him on to help them out and make a friend out of him. I really liked it instead of him. Because like the funny scene when Jake Gyllenhaal first is like approaches him in the cafeteria and he's sitting by himself, and when he decides to actually sit down at the table with him and like it's all talk of the school, so typical. Like again, bordering on cheese, but I think it was more wholesome than cheesy.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
see, and that is the key difference because they're and it's a fine line, and I think that comes down to like the writing and direction of it too, and in the acting, because that could easily be like you said cheesy, but it
didn't come across that way though. Yeah, it works.
Yeah, it's definitely more wholesome than anything.
Right.
And yeah, so I was also looking up too because I wanted to see if there was any differences between the movie and the book, and there are a few actually.
Oh yeah. Okay. What do we got?
Yeah. Okay. It says the movie was praised for its portrayal of the 1950s Appalachia, despite several major and minor differences from the book on which it is based. So Homer Hickam is the main character's name. In the book and in real life, he was nicknamed Sonny. So they called him that a lot in real life.
Okay.
Homer Hickam Jr.'s father was not named John. This was changed in an effort to keep the audience from being confused.
Too many Homers. Okay.
Yeah. There were actually 6 Rocket Boys rather than the 4 in the movie. Some of the movie's representations of the characters are a combination of the real life boys. Their names were, of course, Homer Hickam Jr., Quentin, Wilson, Jimmy, Odell, Carol, Roy Lee Cook, Billy Rose, and Sherman Sayers. The Rocket Boys did not steal the railroad parts that you said as in the film. However, they did attempt to grab a cast iron pipe under the tracks, and according to Homer's website, this almost got him killed.
Oh boy.
While the boys were accused of starting a fire, they were never detained. The police soon realized that their rockets could not have traveled over 3 miles, and the boys were exonerated. Homer never had to prove their innocence as his character did in the film. Now, I guess it does feel like more of a movie thing.
Yeah.
When you're watching it.
Agreed.
But it's fine. It's fine. Sometimes a movie's gonna movie, and that's cool.
Yeah, that's a good expression. I also like too that, like, although the principal is very much more of like an antagonistic character for majority of the movie, at the time, once they are sort of proven that they didn't start it, and he more like turns on their side and gets Homer enrolled in the school again. I like that he sort of switches to their side too.
Yep. Homer actually never dropped out of school to work in the town's mine. He did, however, work in the mine the following summer, as described in Hickam's book, Sky of Stone. And then Homer never met Werner von Braun. As it turns out, von Braun was looking for the Rocket Boys exhibit when Homer was looking for him, and they missed each other.
Oh. On that note, too, so Werner von Braun, the former Nazi scientist, apparently him and the actual Jake Gyllenhaal are distant cousins in real life.
Oh, really? Oh, that's crazy.
Both common descendant they have they're both descendants of William the Conqueror, who I recognize from a history class, but can't tell you what he did. But yeah, pretty interesting. Gyllenhaal, I think, also is like a European name.
Yeah. Also, it's totally not completely off topic for the movie because Jake Gyllenhaal is in it. I would like to point out, like, when writing, spelling Gyllenhaal for any article, even though you would think I've typed it so many times that I should like know it offhand. Sometimes I have to like relook and be like, and it's also it's not an easy name to spell offhand either.
I don't think I've ever successfully written it. No.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare name.
Yeah. And like I said, the other cultural impact, we talked about the festivals that they held in West Virginia and Tennessee. They said the Rocket Boys often visit the festival in West Virginia, which is also called the Rocket Boys Festival, while the festival in Tennessee focuses more on the filming locations. The Tennessee Festival site claims that the festival is a celebration of our heritage. Also, they said Jeff Bezos, the billionaire founder of Amazon, saw a screening of October Sky in 1999. In a subsequent conversation with the science fiction writer Neil Stevenson, Bezos commented that he had always wanted to start a space company. Stevenson urged him to do so. Bezos then started the private aerospace manufacturing and services company Blue Origin, and Stevenson became one of the company's early employees. So he was him. So Jeff Bezos himself, inspired by the movie.
Okay, wow,
it's all about is all about inspiration. Yeah, that is interesting.
Actually super cool.
And then as far as reviews when the movie came out, it has a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. So it's very fresh. It's very, very fresh. It received an A cinema score on its opening day from opening moviegoers when it first premiered. And they said many critics commended the movie for its focus on family values and inspirational aspects, particularly the main character's relationship with his father and the actor's performance. Roger Ebert gave the film 3.5 stars out of 4. Recognized that the film doesn't simplify the father into a bad guy or a tyrant. He understandably wants his son to follow in his footsteps, and one of the best elements of the movie is him breaking free. He is respecting his father. The movie has very deep values in it. And continue to get reviews. Some websites actually put it on their entertainment outlets listed on one of their best movies of the year. It didn't make a ton of those lists, but it was on some.
I think deservedly so. With definitely seeing it now again, I think I would put it up there. One of my favorite '90s movies, if not just from 1999, and criminally overlooked too. Again, just based on how much I enjoyed it. today. I don't feel like in the mainstream I hear this movie talked about. I only by chance having seen it in middle school is the only way that I even knew what it was. I don't think I've been put on this movie from anybody else or from any like of the various like socials I follow of other movie pages. I don't know about you. Has that been your experience too?
Yeah, it kind of has been mine. I mean, the only like real, I think, association I really had with it over the years, and not like thinking about it much, is if it is brought up in some way, it's more brought up as like, oh, that's one of Jake Gyllenhaal's earlier movies, and then that
Right.
kind of doesn't really. And then beyond that, I don't think I really thought about it much else. Like if someone else were to ask me, like, oh, where did he? I knew what movie broke him out, and it was this one. But then, like, I would probably name it with a group, but I wouldn't just name this. I'd be like, oh, I think it's October Sky or Donnie Darko. It was like somewhere
Right.
around then. But like the movie as a whole, I don't think it's talked about a lot at all. And and consider how good the reviews were. 91% press rating is pretty good on the
Yeah, absolutely.
Rotten Tomatoes site. I am kind of surprised that it doesn't have. I don't want to say like this kind of like staying power, but like it definitely doesn't seem to get brought up in like even retrospectively.
No, yeah, no, I completely agree, which surprises me. But I mean, there are a million movies out there, and it's hard to give them all justice. But I mean, for those maybe that are listening that haven't seen October Sky, I mean, safe to say, I think it gets the stamp of approval from both of us, and you definitely should not overlook it, especially fans of Jake Gyllenhaal or Chris Cooper's or Laura Dern's or even Joe Johnston. If you guys have watched movies that we rattled off that he's directed before, and you haven't seen October Sky, safe to say, I think you'd really enjoy it.
Yep. As we said when we were reading his filmography, that we were surprised. I was like, oh, he did that too.
Yeah, it's like, actually pretty nuts filmography.
Yeah, I forgot that he did Captain America: The First Avenger. Totally blanked on that.
That's what I know him from, but other than the other movies he's done, that's what I associate him with, I guess I should say.
Yeah. But yeah, the movie does get our seal of approval for sure. I mean, I think you would have to have like a tiny black heart to not like be like
a lump of coal in your heart and
basically to not like be like moved by it or inspired by it. It's one of those movies that doesn't really do anything wrong. Like it's just like
exactly
at all. And I'm kind of mad at myself for letting that much time go between having seen it last and also not kind of like rotating it more in like my kind of repertoire, movie watching, and also like
it's
recommending it more to other people.
Recommending is where we can step in and sort of maybe get more people onto watching it. So hopefully people that are, if you ever listening to this anniversary episode, by all means go out and watch it and spread the word. It really is a phenomenal little movie for sure. I'd say it's not too grandiose or ambitious, but it does everything it does, like you said, right. It doesn't really misstep anywhere.
Yeah, at all.
And sometimes that's all you need.
I agree. And they really did a good job with the poster by putting from the producer of Field of Dreams, another movie that inspires and chokes people up whenever they watch
another one I have not seen actually.
Oh, it's good. I mean, like, I'm not even like a baseball person. I don't know what it is about sports movies. Like, I didn't grow up playing in them, but like, sometimes when I watch
I'm
them,
not huge on sports movies either, and I did grow up playing a lot.
But there's certain ones when I watch them, like you have like. It's hard not to feel moved by them, or like the kind of like camaraderie, teamwork, and like winning against all odds. I don't know. I guess I'm into that. And why they kind of work for me sometimes. But yeah, I guess we are at the point where we have to give this one a score. Did you letterbox this one yet?
Not yet. It'll be coming after for sure. Okay. But in keeping with letterbox score, I mean, there's nothing about this movie that I have issue with. I would say that maybe it just doesn't quite reach that level of like an absolutely perfect movie for me, but it would be very, very close. And for that reason, I would give it 4 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, we're on the same page. I was gonna give it 4 too.
Nice. There we go. Okay, perfect. Right in agreement. That's great.
Yeah, solid 4 and completely entertaining. And I think, like you said, it's a small movie, but I think the intentions make it feel bigger than it is. And
yeah, for sure.
So like, but yeah, I think one of those movies from the class of 1999. I hope since it is celebrating this milestone anniversary, because 25 is a big one.
That's right.
That more people will talk about it and share it. I did see Mark did post for it on his release date rewind he posted that it was his 25th anniversary today. I saw some stuff on Twitter earlier that some people shouted it out. So hopefully more people are discovering it and sharing it, because I think it's a really good movie that more people should see. I would love for like a newer generation to find it and
Yeah, definitely.
And because like I said, I think when I said earlier, you don't really have a lot of movies like this anymore
Definitely not.
that really sell that kind of wholesome, like, inspirational, vibe anymore. And I think the way kids grow up now is a little bit different from how they were growing up in 1999.
Scarily different. You're absolutely right.
But this is the kind of stuff they should be checking out, and to hopefully maybe push them to do and go for their dreams, and and without. If you're ever told by someone that you can't do something, you really feel like you can do it. I think the best person to believe in yourself is yourself sometimes, and you just got to do what you want to do, especially when you have particular dreams. And I think that this movie sells that, and I think a new generation of movie watchers would get a lot out of seeing a movie like this because of its themes and because of the message in it. So hopefully more people start spreading it around.
Yes, I agree. And if anyone happens to be listening that is in any way on any sort of school or curriculum board, by all means, continue to show this movie because it's very impactful. I'd say to anybody in school, if you're going through any sort of curriculum that involves sort of rockets or engineering or anything like that, I'd say it'd be a pivotal watch. I'm glad I got to see it in school. I hope it's still in the curriculum here. I don't know if it is, but I feel like it would be one of those movies that would make sense to be screened at NASA too.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally see that too. And I think I'm going to throw a poll up for this guy. I would like to know if anyone else saw this for the first time in school, because I saw it for the first time in high school. You said you saw it for the first time in what would be
Right.
what? Junior high, middle school.
High, yeah.
Yeah, so I want to know if like other people also discovered it or watched in high school. I do remember the vibe when it was shown, because like there's that running joke sometimes when teachers will throw on a movie because they don't have anything planned for the day, or they don't really, I don't want to say don't feel like it, but that's usually the joke. They'll be like, oh, they mustn't feel like coming up with a lesson plan, so this is why we're watching a movie. But this was one that was thrown on because it felt that way. It felt like, oh, we don't have anything really to learn today.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah. So we're just gonna watch this.
Luckily, ours tied into our curriculum, which was made it interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, I do want to know if any other people discovered this for the first time in high school, because I feel like that would be a good point to like. I feel like this would be one that you would probably have seen for the first time in school. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if more people like ourselves saw it that way for the first time.
Let us know, guys.
Yeah, and that kind of wraps up
exactly
episode 152 of Back to the Blockbuster, our third anniversary episode of the year so far. I want to number these. I know we're going to have a lot of anniversary episodes.
I'm glad that you've been doing so, because I have already lost count.
Because I really would want to know by the time we get to the end of the calendar year, like how many did we fit in? Because we've joked about how like just the class of 99 alone is a very daunting anniversary milestone year. And we're going to try to get as many of these good ones your way as we can, but we know we can't get them all in. But I'm glad that we're able to do ones like this, because this is not like an obvious pick. And you've actually done this before when you had us do Dallas Buyers Club, because that wasn't an obvious one either. And then another one was Fruitville Station. That wasn't too obvious either, and that was another good one to cover as well.
Yes.
So I'm glad to shine a light on the not too obvious ones, but we'll also have some other fun, popular ones to kind of tire ourselves out trying to watch stuff that came out in 99 or 89, whatever. A lot of work to do at Back to the Blockbuster this year in terms of movie anniversaries.
We got a busy schedule.
Yeah. And if you want to continue listening to some of our anniversary episodes or our news show, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Spotify. But we also need to shout out Playlist Studios and their app, because they have been very, very good to us. They're also currently working on getting us fully up and running on our YouTube page, so we will also have our videos and stuff on YouTube, in addition to listening to us on your favorite podcast platforms. So that'll be another way to discover the show, and we are going to do our very best to generate more content that is suitable for like the visual medium as well. So you're going to see like a lot of reels from us. And I think the good thing about the YouTube part of it, I think we're going to be able to sell ourselves more as individuals and not just like the back to the blockbuster image as it is. You'll be able to get to know us, Gais and Jackson, a bit more via the YouTube channel. So we are very excited for all those changes coming soon, and we are very happy that you guys have continued to support the show across any platform that you choose to listen to us on. And also, I want to mention this before I wrap up completely. We had a really good good pods week.
Yes, we did.
The show itself, I think for the first time cracked the top 10 for the top 100 shows on their app, any category. So we were number 9, and right below us, it's so weird because they have every podcast on there, but they pushed independent podcasts to the front. But it was just funny because we were number 9, and at number 10 there was like the podcast for like Dateline was like right beneath us. So that was kind of funny to see that.
Okay, neat.
And then and a lot of our episodes have charted high on just the top 100 episodes on Good Pods, any category as well. We had like a news episode that stayed on. I don't know what it was. I don't know if the keyword it was the DC Supergirl casting one. I don't know if it was just I don't know if it was the keywords in it or what it is. I think keeping the episodes shorter has also helped with the staying power of each episode. But yeah, just want to thank you guys for supporting us on all our platforms, but that one especially because they really do shine a light on independent podcasts. And I don't know, it's been nice to see the kind of progression of the show and the support.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So like we're excited about that. We're excited about so many things that we're going to be bringing you back to the Blockbuster, and Jackson and I actually are going to be talking again very shortly after this episode is, because we have another special episode that we're going to be doing for you guys, a pretty interesting one about AI, the doom and gloom of AI
it's about to get dark
for the entertainment industry. So that's going to be a fun, thought-provoking conversation that we also hope you guys enjoy. But until then, we will see you next time.
Yes, guys. Take care. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
We're getting so good at keeping